So today, 4 reasons why you should use flatwounds. Okay, let's get into it. The tone. And that's probably the main reason why you want to, or even are considering trying out flatwounds, is the tone. I've talked in more detail about this in my tone video. They are dead sounding. So this is with the tone all the way up. With the tone off, you get a very vintage sort of sound. Now there's a good reason for this, mainly because when the bass guitar was first invented, the only strings available were flatwounds, and it wasn't until the 60s when you get companies like Rotosound making round wounds, particularly for rock people such as John Entwistle and so on. If you want that vintage tone, go with flatwounds. And there are a lot of young and old players, bass players, who prefer this combination. So a P bass, so this one split coil pickup with flatwounds, just to get that specific tone. Okay. Number 2 is feel. So I mentioned that they are flat, so they sound dead, but they're also flat because of their construction as well, their feel. Round wounds have grooves in the winding of the strings, hence the name round wound. They are round wound a single core, whereas these are completely flat. The feel, they feel particularly smooth. Some people like the feel, some people don't like the feel. Personally, it took me a while to get used to the feel when I first started using flatwound. Some people might not know what they feel like. So if you haven't tried flatwounds, please go out and try a bass with flatwounds, or get yourself a second-hand pair of strings, and we'll get onto the main reason for that in a minute, which is number 3, longevity. What I'm talking about here is a mixture of tone, but also the feel and everything like that. So for example, with round wounds, the tone will fade over time. The brightness of round wounds, the punchy attack, will fade over time the more that you play them. With round wounds, they stay the same. So for example, week 1, they'll sound like this. Week 51, they'll sound like this as well. So for example, some people never change their flatwound strings. One of the most famous bass players for doing this was James Jamerson, who famously never changed his strings ever, to get that vintage tone. And this is where the whole stereotype of bass players never change their strings comes from. But there's also a good reason to change them, and it might be a hygiene thing, cleaning your strings and so on. That's one possibility. The other thing as well is to think, well, if I'm spending X amount of money on strings, then it's an investment, and that is point number 4, the cost. At the time of this recording, flatwounds are anywhere between 30 and 60 pounds a set, which you might think, oh my god, that's a lot. Round wound sets are a lot cheaper, and that is true. However, because, like I mentioned with the longevity, you can buy a decent set of flatwounds and they will last a lot longer. So, for example, I personally change my flatwound strings about once a year, maybe, because this is my main gigging bass and I use it all the time. Whereas my round wound strings, if I want that brightness and to continue having that bright punchy tone, I have to change mine every 3 months, maybe every 2 months. It depends how much I'm using the bass. So think about that when you're considering the cost, and don't feel threatened or overwhelmed by the overall cost of Flatwounds. Okay, so what do you think about Flatwounds? Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? Leave a comment below. What is your favorite brand of Flatwound strings? My brand is in the description below. They are Rotosound. They've taken years for me to find my specific brand. There is also a bonus here, which is technically number 5. The string gauges usually on Flatwounds are a little bit thicker, particularly on sets like the Steve Harris signature set. So that's something to bear in mind as well for Flatwounds. So if you enjoyed this mini lesson, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more so you don't miss out on any other videos. And until next time, see ya.